Okay then, Dustin. So we're going to talk about the current album, Resurrect the Insurgent, which was originally released in 2015. But for some reason, you sent me a biography and it said that the label wasn't impressed with it, so they shelved it. What was the reason? Because it's a great album. What happened?
Well, it's actually a bit more complicated than that. That's the simplified version.
Okay.
So, admittedly, looking back in hindsight, I'm fairly understanding to what happened. At the time, I was extremely jaded. That's why in 2015, I put it out digitally and just done. I'm out. I'm out of the business. So it was just me as the original band member. Everyone else is no longer the band. So the fifth album is essentially me with a carryover of Mark, who was on the previous two albums on guitar, and with new singer Albert Ribka, who's currently the singer now in Category 5, and drummer Matt Lefevre, and lead guitarist Chris Cromple. Uh, it was a really challenging because I was doing everything on my own at that point. So uh, Curtis was like, my day, I was, we were like the Dave Evelson and Dave Mustaine, the
Okay. Yeah.
Lars and
Yeah.
the Lars and James kind of crew. So I don't have my wingman. So everything was just kind of it was basically, we were kind of joking about it. When we get together now, we joke about how this is my solo album titled Category 5.
We should have called
But
it Dustin Five.
yeah. But well, five of the songs from this on this album were written with the band, the older band, and then there was five other songs that we basically just wrote on the fly. Um, at that time, that's when the whole downloading torrent thing was really bad, and a lot of the contacts, the label contacts that I had for A&R, I had shopped them a demo, and they were all right. Yeah, we're interested. Let us know when the product's finished. We'll take a listen.
So what label
And when
was
I
it? What label was it back then?
oh, there was several of them. I there was 15 of them at the
Yeah.
time. Um, and even like Nightmare, who we were on at the time, was like a pass. So uh, at that time, I was going through a divorce. I was living in an apartment, so I had no access to a studio. It was dire straits, and without a label partner to release the physical media and help do with the publicizing of it got shelved because I couldn't do it on my own financially, and everyone else in the band was kind of hired guns. They're
I
not.
was just gonna say to you, Dustin, did you approach Keith Menza from because he had his own label, didn't he?
I do believe, yeah, Keith did have his own label.
Siege
But
and
at the
Records.
Yeah, but at the time, when I was talking to Keith, he really he wasn't doing anything. I believe he was just working with his brother at the time. Um, day job, HVAC stuff. It's actually something me and Keith talked about when we would talk. So we were
Yeah,
in the same
rest
industry.
in peace, Keith.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, there was no interest in it. So after a lot of back and forth, I just shelved it because I couldn't find anyone to release it with. And in 2015, after both the singer and drummer on the album, Albert and Matt, they emailing me constantly, just do something, because they wanted people to hear what they had done, because it is a good album. It's a really good album. But I was so destroyed about the business side of things that I told them, look, this is the best I can do. I'll put it out digitally. I'll put a price tag on it so I have some value so people feel some reason to buy it. And I'm done. I'm out. No more Category 5. And that's what happened. I just uploaded what we had that was mixed by Dennis Ward and mastered by him, and just put it up online and close the doors. That was the end of the band.
So the album title, who came up with the title, and did you have any other titles? Because I'm looking at the album cover now. The original cover's got a soldier and a mirror. How does that compare with the title? How does that reflect? Obviously, reflect with the mirror.
Oh, the Resurrect the Insurgents. So you'll notice that all the album titles from the second album on have always kind of like they have a theme. And it's so the theme was always kind of an inside joke for our band because it seemed like no matter what we were doing, it always seemed like we were doing the opposite of what everyone else was doing, whether it be decisions or what we were writing. It was always we were one step behind or way ahead of the curve or something's. Everything was we were always like rebelling or against everything. So the album titles are always just kind of constructed in that way that I think when this album came out, some of the feedback I got is they thought it was something political, and I'm like, no, this is from 2010 when we came up with this album title, and all their album titles have some sort of mild revolutionary kind of feel to it, but it has nothing to do with politics. It's an actual inside joke with our band where we always seem to be fighting against something in our inner circle, ourselves, fighting against the system, the music business, fighting against, our own mentality. There's always some sort of resistance to things, and we always found that funny. So that was where the title came from. As far as the artwork goes, well, I wasn't being picky. I just wanted something that looked badass. There's really no theme to it by any means, just other than I wanted it to look really cool. And the label that re-released it had an artist that has done some other albums that were really cool. And I was like, yeah, let him take a crack at it. And what you see here in your backdrop, and it's on the album, is exactly what it was, and it's absolutely beautiful. I was totally into it. Plus, it has our mascot. Most people don't know why or how this girl came to be on our album covers.
Who is she? What do you call her?
So the story is it's so giving. I'm going to give credit to my good friend Rainer Kowitz in Germany. He's the artist that did the second and third album. An awesome guy. And apparently, this is a girl. I want to say it's his cousin he used as his model. Her name was Britta. So we just always call her Britta. So anytime we're coming up with album artwork, it's like, well, where's Britta going to go on the album? So I don't know if the next album we're writing right now is going to have Britta on it, but I'm pretty sure it will in some form or another, probably.
Yeah, it's certainly the new album cover certainly goes with the old covers compared to the one with the soldier. It's like a continuation, like a chapter.
Exactly. Yes. And that was one of the reasons why because the guys at the record label are big fans of our band. So they kind of knew the direction to take this when we were having the conversation about the album artwork. And the other cover that was our drummer at the time who plays drums on the fifth album right there. He came up, he did that himself and sent it to me because when I was telling him I need to put this out, I need some artwork. And I was kind of complaining, like, I don't want to, cough up, $2,000 for some pro artwork for something that's just going to be digital anyways. It's silly. He came up with that and sent it to me. And I was like, that's kind of cool. I'm actually very impressed. Let's use it. All right, I'll roll with it. So obviously when you get this re-release of this album that's now 13 years old, when you open it up, the old album cover that was released digitally is actually the back insert. So you still get that in there as well.
Yeah, awesome. I can say you got involved with Dennis Ward. Obviously, a lot of people out there watching this will know him for his work with Pink Cream 69.
Yes.
He's a brilliant producer. He's done some great albums. He's now playing bass guitar for Magnum. So
yes.
how did you hook up with Dennis?
Very nervously sending an email, hoping and praying to gods he would say yes, because everyone else had told me no. And it's not like he wasn't my first choice. I had three guys that I wanted to work with who are at the time where I'm still fans of their production work and the bands they work with, which Dennis Ward was one of them. And I sent out 3 emails. I got no reply from one gentleman. Another gentleman said he had too much on his plate for the moment and probably wouldn't be able to get to it for about 6 months, but did have interest. And the other one was Dennis. And he says, yeah, I've got time. So it's like, oh, perfect. And of course, when you hear something that's like, because, that was my first album as acting producer for it and recording it. To me, it's like I'm very critical and I'm like, this is this needs a professional touch. So when Dennis sent me the sample mixes, I cried. I was like, it sounds awesome. And he's even using the Pink Cream snare drum, which is one of my favorite snare sounds. It's got that nice little quick attack with a little, kind of it on the top of it there. Perfect. So for me, the fifth album, because he was the he did the mixing and mastering on it. The songs were written, and you'll probably have noticed because you reviewed it, that it has kind of that mix of like, old school thrash, power metal, progressive metal. It kind of
I think Dennis is really good at doing drum sounds.
Yep. Oh yeah, and that's why I wanted him to do it, specifically so he could pull in those drum sounds, but also have that warmth, because a lot of his albums do have like a very warm sound. Like one of my favorite albums that he does is his own band called Place Vendom. That's just
amazing. I know them. Yeah, I know those guys.
And I'll always try and grab that stuff. If there's anything like that he's touched, I usually will buy, because I love how warm and full the sound is without too much compromise. And that's why I was glad that he was able to work with me on that album.
I mean, you mentioned about Dennis. I mean, have you asked him to remaster and remix the previous albums?
No, we haven't. I never did reach out to him for that. Right. It might still be an option because we're still extracting the material from the DAT tapes currently.
It's like you said earlier on, you might be releasing a box set, so that could be a good time to do it.
Oh yeah. It was something that we've discussed, because the first two albums were mixed by our guitarist and mastered by him, where the latter albums were mastered by somebody else. So the fifth album's the actual only first album that was done by a third party like Dennis, where everything was always in-house before, because we couldn't afford, or we didn't know anybody to do it the way we should have done it. So having those albums done with a third ear probably would be a good idea. So I'm sure we're probably going to take that into consideration. And who will do it, we're not sure yet.
So you mentioned two other guys that you approached. Are we allowed to say who they were? Are you keeping that?
Oh yeah, it was Frederick Nordstrom, does Dream Evil.
Yeah, I know Frederick. Yeah,
I used to talk to one of the guys in Anubis Gate, and he recommended Jacob Hansen.
Oh yeah, I was going to say Jacob Hansen. Yeah, I know Kim from Anubis Gate.
Oh yeah. Love those guys. Used to talk to them back because we had our message boards were on the same server for a while back in the old days when they were on
Nightmare Records, probably.
Yep, when they were on Nightmare, and also when they moved over to Locomotive for a time. I was keeping in touch with those guys for a bit. I haven't talked to them since. Buy their albums though all the time. But yeah, that they had recommended Jacob Hansen, so he'd do a phenomenal job. And at the time, he was starting to really kind of blossom as a producer, and I think he was pretty busy for sure.
Yeah, Kimball will probably be watching this now. Actually,
what's that?
Kimball will probably be watching this when he online at some point.
Oh, really? Oh, that'd be so cool.
So the message, say it to him now, so he can.
No, Anubis Gate was when we were label mates on Nightmare. Them and Cloudscape were my two favorites.
Oh, Cloudscape! I used to know those guys. I know those guys real well. Mike Henderson and that. I've seen them live a couple of times, and
they're so good. They're underrated.
Their third album, Global Warning, is the best album they did. It's just absolutely. I wish they'd reform. I really do.
Oh yeah, I agree. I was sad because I had a few albums that I was missing in the discography that I didn't realize that, because I didn't know they had other albums out after they were off of Nightmare, so I kind of lost contact. And yeah, they're phenomenal band. Them and Anubis Gate were probably one of my favorites from when we were label mates.
I mean, when you listen to Anubis Gate's first couple of albums, they're very Crimson Glory. They remind me of an American band called is it Kingsbane, or they were very Crimson Glory sounding as well. Lord Bane.
Lord Bane. Lord Bane?
Yeah.
Lord Bane. Yeah. Yeah, they kind of do. But it's funny because I had recently listened to this band Invocator.
Oh, no, yeah, I know Jacob Hansen. I used to know those guys way back in the day.
Yeah. And when I was listening I went back and was listening to, because I got the Anubis Gate box set from Nightmare Records. And I went back and was revisiting those earlier albums. And I was like, I can hear where the sound comes from. I can hear I can tell Jacob had touched this at some point. I can hear his production in there. And I was like, oh, because I didn't realize that at the time. I was a little aloof to it. But once they got into that third album, though, holy crap, they were firing on all cylinders. That album is mind-blowingly awesome. It's so good.
I mean, I remember reviewing the Invocator demos before they got a record deal back in '89.
Oh, really? On the
Yeah.
Indicator stuff?
Yeah, I got my name on the first album, the first Invocator album.
Oh, that album is really
They were
tough.
like Dark Angel Creator, really heavy and aggressive.
But very technical. Like
Yeah.
you could hear the instrumentation really well. Like especially with the bass kicking through the mix. That was so cool. I love that. I love that album.
So, Dustin, I mean, getting back to the new album, like I say, it's released on Metallica Blue Records. Now, it's not anything to do with Metallica, is it?
No, not at all. I don't know. I'd have to ask the label bosses. Because the guys are actually like big AOR fans. Like that's one of their primary genres, and they
Right.
re-release a lot of material that's kind of an AOR genre. We were one of the early Us, Truce, and Vector, and
German thrash band, speed metal.
yeah. So we're kind of in that where because the label's trying to branch out, and for the last 2 years they'd always been kind of approaching me like, does anyone want to do the fifth album? I says, there's been some tepid interest in the industry, but no one's like said, let's do it. And they're like, well, let's do it like now. So, all right. Yeah, we're going to do it. What's the name of the record label? Metallic Blue. And of course, because I'm a music nerd, I'm like, is this named after the song from House of Lords? And they're like, yeah.
Is it Metallic Blue or Metallica Blue?
It's metallic with no A. It's just
right, because I'm looking at your biography you sent me and you've got an A on it.
Oh, really? That was
Yeah.
probably that was definitely a typo for sure.
No, just don't make sure Metallica don't try suing you for that. Oh shit!
You're right.
So where is this label based? Are they
They're
European?
actually based out of here in Utah, with where we are.
Right.
That was actually really kind of the convenient part. Is they're big music fans, so that was one of the reasons why when they approached me about doing it, I was like, absolutely. I don't, because the album that album has been sitting there in the dark for a long time. And even though some labels have already had some interest in wanting to pick it up, it was not, I don't know if it was really it was never really like a full commitment. Just just like I said, just tepid interest, like it'd be kind of nice to maybe do something someday. Well, they approached me and they says, let's do it right now, and we're going to give you a budget, and so that way it's no cost out of your pocket. And I was like, no cost? You've got distro. They don't have a publicist, but I'm sure they're working on that. But at the same time, it at least gives the fans who've been wanting a physical copy a physical copy. Plus, we were able to go back into the library, the Category 5 library, and pull out 2 songs that were not released digitally at all. They're only on the CD. And one of those songs does have Norm Skinner from Forbidden on it.
Oh yeah, I noticed that when I reviewed it for you. But I mean, is this coming out on vinyl as well, or is it just CD?
It's just CD. I don't know. I mean, at some point, maybe it could be a vinyl release. That's something that I'd have to discuss with them. But for now, we just wanted to see if there was even a market for this lost album that is finally going to see the light of day, and if there's enough demand for it, maybe that's a possibility.
So you've got new songs wrote, Dustin. How do they compare to all the previous albums? How many songs have you wrote so far?
So far we've got about 10, and they're all written. We're actually I would say we're about 70% of the way through the recording process right now. This is going to be a very interesting album. I'm excited for it because this is, to me, it's like the brotherhood is back. That's how it feels, because you've got me, you've got guitarist Curtis, who's one of the main songwriters with me, and drummer Matt from all the other albums, as well as my good friend who I used to room with when I was in high school, Dan, who's from this thrash band called Davidian. And he's kind of the one that's responsible for getting us back together. This started out as kind of like, him and Curtis and Matt were doing their own thing, and I was retired. And they asked me if I wanted to come play bass on a song because it kind of has that like Fate's Warning vibe, and I understand how to play that kind of music. So when they pulled me in, I decided, all right, I'll jam. I haven't played in 8 years. I'll go ahead and do it. And after I learned the song and played with them, they're like, "Oh, we've got one more. It's just a quick little jam, nothing big. Do you want to learn it?" And I'm like, "Sure." So they showed me the song, and I'm like, I nail it. And I'm like, "All right, it's a thrasher, big time thrasher, like creator thrash."
Oh, really?
It was fun. I was like, "Oh, that was cool." And they're like, "Do you want one more?" I'm like, "All right, guys, what the hell's going on?" I thought I was just doing one song, and they're like, "Yeah, we just figured while you're here, you might as well just do it all." So what started out as what was going to be just kind of a studio project that they were just going to have session musicians coming out and multiple different singers ended up evolving into Mark IV of Category 5, if my memory serves. So it's basically the original three guys from the first four albums with guitarist Dan from Davidian and Albert from the fifth album. And it's definitely going to have those influences because Dan is his influence. He's from up north where we are from. He comes from the death metal, thrash metal haven up north. So he has his songwriting approach is definitely going to have more of a speed metal, thrash metal edge, kind of Germanic thrash, kind of a Bay Area thrash mix. And our drummer Matt, of course, that's kind of where we grew up with it. So this album is going to have definitely an old school metal. I mean, that's what we kind of feel. It's going to be all around old school metal. You're going to have old school thrash, old school US power metal, old school progressive metal. It's going to have a mix of all of that through this entire album. So for us, it's kind of exciting because it's going to have some really cool progressive and power metal songs. Definitely is going to have that US power metal sound in some of the songs, but there's definitely going to be some thrash that no one's ever heard us play before. We're going to throw it down for sure.
So when you say a thrasher, we're looking forbidden overkill, that kind of vibe.
Absolutely, yes.
So you're going to go for a DD bass sound, that real clicky.
Absolutely.
he's like, to me, he's like Lemmy. He's got that distinct, and Steve Harris, they've all got that distinct sound. When it's overkill by DD's bass or Lemmy or certain bass players have that certain.
Yeah, you're nailing it. That's exactly the vibe we're going for. I even changed my bass rig just to accommodate the fact that we're going to, it's definitely going to have that thrash attack with that really cutting, aggressive, punchy bass guitar cutting through. And of course, even in the songs that are more progressive, because there's songs that are definitely like our guitarist Dan, even though he's a thrasher and a death metal guy, he listens to a lot of different metal. His collection is pretty, it's about half my size, but he listens to a lot of different styles too. And because he's always played in death and thrash metal bands, when he got into Category 5, he says, "I've got kind of a Category 5 style song, like Queensryche-ish kind of thing. I've wanted to write, but I don't have, I can't play it in my band, so they'll fire me. So let's bring it to the table." So there's a song on there that he wrote that sounds like we wrote, but we didn't. He did it.
It's
so
weird.
Kind of funny.
It's weird that you mentioned that because Todd Latore did as we all know, did his solo album, but that was more thrash and a bit of black metal in it.
Which one was that?
Todd Latore from Queensryche did his own solo album, came out a couple of years ago. I don't know if you've heard it. Have you heard it?
Oh, yeah. Actually, that was
it's very thrashy and a little bit of death metal and black metal towards the end of the album, but it's a heavy album. To me, it kind of comes across between Fight, Overkill, Testament, and Behemoth.
Oh yeah, and it still has it's funny because one of the things I liked about it was even though it has a thrash edge to it, it still maintains that power metal sound.
Yeah,
but he's not afraid to it's like Iced Earth. When you hear the early Iced Earth stuff, a lot of people call them a power metal band, but when I first heard them when they were first signed to Century Media, I thought they were a thrash band. To this day, I still think they're a thrash band.
Really?
Because of that fast triplet picking right hand kind of stuff, kind of like Cyclone Temple. They're definitely thrash for sure. Even though they have got, like with the Brian Trotch era with his vocals, it's a little more melodic, but that picking that. Oh, here's one thing though. Our drummer, the guy that plays drums in our band, can play guitar as well. So he's written some riffs on this new album we're working on, and they're kind of in that style of Iced Earth and Cyclone Temple, because he's got a mean right hand, mean fast picking hand. He can outpick the guitarists in our band. That is ridiculous. So we started teasing him and calling him Charlie Benante.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So when do you think this album's going to come out? Obviously, it's going to come out next year because we're nearly at the end of the year now, obviously.
I think next year for sure. At least that's what we would hope. I mean, we've got just a couple of more instrumentations to track, and then we have to fly Albert out back to Utah to track the vocals to a few more songs. And I would say hopefully at the earliest, I would say end of next year, if it happens for sure. It's different because nowadays the way the band operates is not like the way it did in the early days. Everyone's families and old, and so we kind of take our time. We're not in a hurry. Back in the old days, we thought we were trying to compete with, market space with other bands that were in the same genre. And now we're just doing it just to have fun. We don't give a shit. So we're not constantly trying to beat ourselves up to try and get things done. We just kind of move at our own pace. But even then, so far it's taken us 3 years to get where we're at. So another year probably might see an album out. But I think after this one comes out, we'll probably have our bearings, and we'll probably start kicking out material a lot quicker, assuming everyone doesn't, beat each other up or quit or get fired.
So do you have a title for the next album? Anything in mind?
Nope, not. I know we're working on a title. We're wanting to stick with our themes of what we have in past albums, kind of with that whole like rebellious, angsty kind of title. But we haven't settled on anything yet. We've discussed the album artwork and what we want on the album artwork, but it's about all we've gotten on it. We're probably going to once we get all the instrumentation tracked and recorded, we'll probably be more final on what we're going to do for artwork and an album title.
You guys never played Europe, have you?
No.
I mean, I go to a festival called Headbangers Open Air in Germany. It's Jorgen from Hellion Records.
Oh yeah,
and Thomas. Maybe you should play there. It's basically somebody's back garden with a stage, and it's absolutely fucking brilliant. I
remember one of the guys. I can't remember if I have a lot of fans who I would consider friends I've talked to for so many years over in Germany who've been to HOA, and I can't remember what it was a long time ago, but I got an email from 2 or 3 of them that were like, oh, they're playing Evil Princess over the speakers, in between bands. They kept playing it over and over. And I was like, really? Maybe they should get the real band to come play then.
I was probably there when they played it, because I've been to that festival 3 times now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's amazing just to see how small the stage is, and it's just like, this is like somebody's back garden. It's like brilliant. It's so intimate and it's so like cozy, and
if there was any offer to come over to Europe and play a show, we'd definitely do it. Assuming the circumstances were good, we would easily do it for sure. And that's where it's kind of sad, because that's where all our fans are. All our sales are over in Europe, especially in Germany and Greece. That's where all our albums are sold. And here we are in the United States, and no one gives a shit about us over here.
Sucks, man. Well, if you do come over, I'll drum tech for you. You know where I am.
Oh, that would be great. You have to watch out for a drummer. He's known to puke in between songs.
All right, okay. So I need a rain mat to stop all the shit flying on my head.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, Dustin, I want to thank you for doing this interview. Do you have anything to say to the people watching this on YouTube?
Just thanks for listening to my drivel and me talking back and forth about my bullshit.
Right, thank you, Dustin.
Yeah, thanks. Just as soon as you post this up, let me know, and I'll start pushing it out.
Please, yeah, and don't forget to mention me on the next album.
I won't.
Cheers, Dustin. Take care, my brother.
See you, Jace.
Bye. Thank you, brother. Bye bye.